Hey, eighth grade, this is lesson 3, and in our etymology lesson today, we're going to be analyzing Latin and Greek roots. So we're going to take a common Latin root to start with, act, and you're going to see on the next slide that this is part of an assignment. We're going to do the first part on the video, and then I'm going to ask that you do the last parts on the assignment. So for this assignment, we're going to be looking at words that all share a similar root, like act, react, active, acting, activate, actually, and then we're going to try and figure out, well, what does that root actually mean? So let's take a look at the next slide and we'll do act together, and then we'll figure out how we can analyze Latin and Greek roots to determine meaning of bigger words. Okay guys, so for this assignment, you're going to be given 3 different single roots. The first one we're going to work on is act, A-C-T. And what we're going to be doing is trying to come up with at least 5 words that contain act in them. So one of the things I want to stress is each part of a word has meaning. So when we come up with a word, it actually has to have a meaning. So for example, I've given you the word reaction. Well, each part of that has a meaning. Re means to do again. Act, we got to figure out. And shun means the state or condition of. So reaction is the state of condition of doing something again. I want to caution you because in person, kids said, well, what about a word like fact? Well, it does have act in it, but the letter F does not have meaning of its own. So fact is its own root, because from there we could build factual. It can build other words. Same thing with a word like cactus. It does indeed contain the letters A-C-T, but C is not a prefix because C doesn't have meaning, and US could be considered a suffix, but we have to make sure it has its own meaning. So whenever we put together prefixes, roots, and suffixes to form larger, more complex words, they actually have to have, each piece has to have meaning. So these do not fit with the Latin root act. So let's see which words do. So when I think about act, I think about words like action. I could add a prefix. I could do active. Maybe I want to add a prefix. Reactive. I could do actor. Someone who acts. I could do actually. I could do action. I could take off a suffix. Actual. So I have a variety of words that all contain the Latin root act. So action. Well, what does action mean? Well, if you're in action, you're doing something. If you're active, you are doing something. If something is reactive, that means something's doing something again. And I've heard myself say 3 times, doing something. So if I were to do a little research, I would find that act actually means 2 things. If it is a verb, it means to do something. If you're using it as a noun, like the act of, it means something done. Or a deed. How do I know? Because words like action and active especially means you're doing something. You are actively involved in an activity. So you notice all those words containing act mean to do something. So for the rest of this assignment, you're going to be investigating, you're going to do the same process. You're going to be looking at the Latin root spect, S-P-E-C-T. And I've given you an example, inspector. I'd like you to come up with at least 4 more to fit that root of spect, and then try to determine, well, what does spect mean, and how can you prove it? On this page, you're going to be looking at the Greek root photo, and I've given you the a word that contains the root and two suffixes, photographer. So what you need to figure out is a list of at least 4 more words that contain photo, and then try to figure out what photo actually means. And what's interesting about photographer, it actually has 2 Greek roots. It has photo and it has graph. So both of those are independent Greek roots that have their own meaning. So by thinking about what each chunk means, we can figure out what the whole word means. The last piece of this assignment is a lot more challenging. I've given you a common word, autobiography. It has 3 Greek roots, so you'll see 3 Greek roots, and and it has the suffix y. The 3 Greek roots are auto, bio, and graph. So what you need to figure out is come up with at least 4 more words that contain auto. I've given you automatic. 4 more words that have bio, like biology, and at least 4 more words that have graph, and I've given you graphite. So again, make a list. You'll have at least 5 words in your list. And then what I want you to do down below is think about, what does auto mean? How do you know? What do you think bio means? How do you know? And what do you think graph means? And how do you know? And then when you put it all together, what would be a definition for autobiography that uses the meanings of auto and bio and graph? So this is etymology, that agglutination, where we're taking word parts and we're putting them together to make a larger, more complex word. So when you finish this assignment, you will need to submit it to me, and we'll talk about it next week.